All right, welcome back to our discipleship course. Continuing on with power lesson 4, which is concerning the story of Isaac and Rebekah, and we were to compare stories of the story of Isaac and Rebekah to the story of Adam and the woman, Cain and Abel, Noah and his ark, story of Abraham, actually Abram and Sarai, as well as Abraham and Sarah, and so firstly, we're going to compare Isaac and Rebekah versus Adam and the woman. We're going to be taking a look at their similarities and we're going to find their differences. Thank you guys for sharing what you had. I had probably like 30 or 40. Um, so let's take a look. So in both stories, there are three males, i.e., a father and two sons and one female. And that's important to know because that's a part of why we do this exercise, is so that we can see the bare bones. Because if you can see these bare bones, the structure of the stories, then you'll be able to recognize the stories later on when they reoccur. Because the whole scripture is just patterns and parallels. Yah tells the same stories over and over and over again, and he makes the same parallels over and over and over again. And so it's imperative that we be able to recognize, what part of the story that we're looking at. See, because then, what the plan is after we get all the stories that are alike, then we can look at the story as a whole and see all the different angles of the story and fully understand the story. Amen.
Yeah.
So when you are doing these exercises, you never want to miss, the basic structure. Hence, you're being presented with three males and a female. With the story of Adam and Eve, you have Yah, you have Satan, and you have Adam, all male, and then you have, of course, the woman who's female. And with the story of Isaac and Rebekah, of course, you have Isaac, you have Jacob, and you have Esau, three males, and of course, Rebekah, the female. And likewise, you also have a father and two sons, in both stories. All right, so both stories have a husband and wife, you know, and both wives come out of Adam. And let's see, the differences in the story of Adam and the woman versus Jacob and Rebekah is that in the story of Jacob and Rebekah, the female is both a wife and a mother, yet in the story of Adam and the woman, she's a wife only. She didn't quite get a chance to become a mother yet. All right, then we have the father. I know absolutely nothing about this movie. It just had the right words, the father. So I am not advocating it. So, but I do like Anthony Hopkins as an actor. You know, both of the fathers are presented as having a divine origin. So that's another thing that they had in parallel. You know, of course, Yah is divine. Divinity is himself itself. But Esau had a divine order. You know, in that he was a miracle child. You know, his mother's womb was reopened after it had closed because she was 90 years old, you know, and so he was from on high. He was a divine child, you know. So um, now the difference is that in the story of Yaakov and Rebekah, the father is presented as a um, divine and earthy, because Isaac, you know, he was of divine origin, but he was earthy. He was also a human. And in the story of Adam and the woman, the father is divine and heavenly. You know, there was nothing earthy about it. Now, another similarity, both of the fathers are presented without sin in relation to the familial sin, anyway. You know, so when it comes down to the familial sin of the story, you know, both fathers are without sin. Both fathers are also presented as ignorant to the sins of the family. The differences was one was due to being absent during the time of the sin, and the other was due to being blind during the time of the sin. Then we have both fathers discovered the sin after the fact due to something said. You know, with Yah and Adam, you know, he discovered it because Adam said, you know, I was hiding because I was naked. And so that was the cue, that was the clue that, you know, that Yah honed in on. Like, who told you you were naked? Did you eat of the tree that I told you not to eat of? And of course he had, you know. But with Yitzhak, it was when his son Esau came in and was like, okay, Dad, I'm here. You know, I done made you savory meat. And he like, man, I'm full. Who is this? You know, and of course that's when he put two and two together and figured out, hey, your brother came in and stole your own blessing. You know, and so both of them made that discovery, you know, due to the saying of another. You know, now, nevertheless, they both came to the conclusion on their own without anyone telling them. So no one told them, you know, they came to the conclusion on their own. And also, both fathers sent away their younger sons. You know, so in relation to Yah and his son Satan, as well as his son Adam, Adam being the younger of the two, he was the one that he sent away. You know, and we hear about later on in scripture about Satan, you know, still going before the Father, you know, such as in the book of Job, right? So that's with the father, similarities with the father. How about the female lead? You know, so we only had one female in each story. You know, but they were both wives, and both wives came out of Adam after he was put into a deep sleep. You know, of course, the woman came out of Adam after Yah put Adam in a deep sleep, and says that he took the curvature or the rib, if you prefer, out of Adam, and he made woman. And you know, also Rebekah came out of Adam after he was in a deep sleep, i.e., dead. You know, the scripture speaks of, you know, death as a type of sleep. Amen. Even as the Messiah said, hey, we need to go see Lazarus. You know, it's like, you know, for he sleepeth. He said, oh, if he sleepeth, he doeth well. Like, no, he's dead. You know, so yeah, that's definitely a deep sleep. You know, so both wives came out of Adam after he was put into a deep sleep. The difference is that in one instance, Adam was reawakened afterwards, and in the other, he wasn't. So when the woman was taken out of Adam after he was put in a deep sleep, he was reawakened. But with Isaac and Rebekah, you know, Adam wasn't reawakened after he received his wife. All right. Both wives are presented as sinful. Both wives initiated the sin. Both wives were instrumental in leading the other members of their family into sin. The difference is in the story of Adam and the woman. The wife instructs the husband to do wrongly, and in the story of Isaac and Rebekah, the wife instructs the son to do wrongly. See, and I point these things out because these things, they mean something, they represent something, and they're imperative clues to the overall understanding. Let me see where did I leave off at. Okay, the difference with the story of Adam and the woman and Isaac and Rebekah, we're told that the woman's punishment, we're told of the woman's punishment, but in the story of Isaac and Rebekah, Rebekah seems to go unpunished. We never hear of her being punished at all. So she seemed to go undisciplined. Both wives were childless at one point. Both wives had troubled pregnancies. We know that the woman had a troubled pregnancy because that was part of the curse that she received. And we read about Rebekah's troubled pregnancy so much that she began to pray like, hey, if I'm pregnant, I'm going to bring forth these children. What's going on up here? And that's when she was told you have two nations in her womb. Now, both wives misled their husbands. So we had, of course, the woman misled her husband into eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And also we had Rebekah misled her husband Esau, with the deception that she had her son do. Both wives were involved with skins of animals. The difference is one was covered with skins, and the other covered someone else with the skins. So Yah covered the woman with skins, but Rebekah covered her son with skins. And so, those were from my female lead. Now, in both stories, we also saw that there were two brothers. Satan and Adam are indirectly presented as brothers, and of course, Jacob and Esau are brothers as well. In both stories, one of the brothers gets sent away from the family, and of course, we read about Satan being the son of Elohim. We read about Adam being the son of Elohim, I believe in Luke. And so we see these two are a type of brothers. Now, these two brothers, you have an elder brother and a younger brother. So both elder brothers were allowed to stay with the father. Both elder brothers were killers in that they both were hunters. But one is a serpent, and serpents are hunters by nature. And Esau, also, we're told that Esau is a hunter. Both elder brothers are wicked. Hence, they both planned to murder their younger brothers. The difference is one succeeded and the other didn't. Both elder brothers are said to be of the field. I thought that was a pretty significant point right there. They both are said to be of the field. Say a lot. The difference is one is said to be the lowest of the low of the field. Of course, that was the serpent who was cursed to go in his belly and to be the lowest of the field. Both elder brothers were animalistic. The difference is that one is likened to a serpent and the other to a goat. You know, hence Isaac was fooled because Yaakov had on goat skin. All right. Then we have the younger brothers, or the younger brother, if you would. Now, in both stories, the younger brother was blessed by his father. You know, so we see Adam was blessed in that, you know, he was, you know, essentially made ruler of the world. You know, he was given dominion over everything that was in the world. Now, in both stories, the younger brothers are shown to be sinful. You know, Adam, he was with sin. You know, he sinned by hearkening unto his wife, and of course, Jacob, who was the younger brother, you know, he was shown to be sinful by hearkening unto the voice of his mother. In both stories, the younger brothers knowingly sinned. You know, so whereby like the woman was able to say she was beguiled by the serpent, Adam couldn't say that. You know, because he just hearkened unto the voice of his wife. And likewise with Yaakov, you know, he knew what he was doing was wrong. He even stated it. So they both knowingly sinned. In both stories, the younger brothers uh, knowingly sinned via food. You know, they both of their sins had to do with food. Of course, with Adam, it was the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And with Yaakov, it was the savory meat of the kids. You know, so the difference is one involved fruit and the other meat. In both stories, the younger brother was led astray via adhering to the instructions of the wife in the story. You know, so they both were led astray because they was following the instructions of the wife in the story. That's a very significant, you know, tidbit right there. When you know what the wife represents. Say wow. All right. In both stories, the younger brothers tried to hide their sin from their father. You know, in both stories, they tried to hide their sin specifically from their father. You know, so of course, Yaakov, he had to disguise himself to hide his sin from his father. Otherwise, he would have found him out. You know, and we see when Yah go into the garden and looking for Adam, you know, it says that he was hiding. All right, so they both tried to hide their sins from their father. The difference is that in the story of Adam and the woman, the trees were used to hide in. But with the story of Isaac and Rebekah, deception and the skins of goats were utilized. Now, in both stories, the younger brother was separated from the presence of the father. Why the younger brother? Why the younger brother get separated? You know, say a lot. In both stories, the younger sons were covered with skins. You know, so Adam, being presented as the younger son betwixt him and Satan, was covered with sins, and Yaakov was covered with sins. I mean, skins, not sins. You know. Yeah, so both stories, the younger brothers were were covered with skins. The difference is with the story of Adam, he was covered by his father, and in the story of Isaac and Rebekah, he was covered by his mother. In both stories, the fathers are responsible for them obtaining their wives. So the father, he's responsible for both of them obtaining their wives. Of course, Yah made the woman for Adam, and Esau's father, sent his servant to go get him a wife. So fathers were both responsible for them obtaining their wives, you know. And also we have family separation. So with both stories involve family enmity. That is, the enemy is a family member. So the first thing should come to your mind is what Yahshua says in the last days, that your enemies will be those of your very own household. See, that's not something new. That's something that's been taking place in Scripture from the very beginning. It pertains to the original stories. See, but because we read it, in the Rebekah shower, the New Testament, we tend to miss the connection to all the other stories. But when you start looking at these stories, you see that the enemy was oftentimes in the family, all along. But it sounds, so absurd, nowadays. What, our enemies are going to be those of our very own household? Well, who argue more than siblings? So, again, this is why we look at these things, and we point out these details, because, when you begin to see the structure of the stories, and you begin to recognize the different stories, you'll begin to fill in that story, per Scripture. And then you'll get the fullness of what Scripture is speaking to concerning that story and that structure, that particular story that deals with 3 men and 1 woman, that deals with a family structure that's made up of that, where you have a wife, a father, and 2 sons. Time and time again, you read through the word, and the elder shall serve the younger. The elder shall serve the younger. The elder shall serve the younger. When you read about these things, this should take you all the way back to the story of Adam and Eve. It should take you to the story of Cain and Abel. It should take you to the story of Jacob and Esau. It should take you to the story of Isaac and Ishmael. See, because these stories are being replicated, and we're given more details of the stories as they're duplicated, as they're retold. But if you're not able to recognize that you're dealing with the same story, then you're never going to be able to see what Yah is trying to show you. See, and this is why in Yeshayahu or Isaiah, concerning studying the word, he says, for it is given precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. You have to put it all together. It's like a puzzle. And the more you begin to put it together, the more it begins to blossom, the more it begins to, illuminate you. The more you begin to see, the more in depth in 3D it becomes. At first it just starts out and it's just like, 2-dimensional, just flat, black and white. But when you start noticing, oh, this is the same story. Oh, this is the same story. Oh, this is the same story. Okay, well, let me see. Oh, I see this nuance in this story and this nuance in that story. Then you begin to start putting the pieces together. You know, because the scripture begins to give you certain parameters. You know, for instance, like we see in comparing the story of Adam and the woman with Isaac and Rebekah, we see there's 3 males and there's 1 female, you know, but the female in one is a wife and a mother, and the female in the other is just a wife. And we see all the sin is associated with the wife, not necessarily the mother, but the wife. So what is y'all saying? You know, so when we begin to see these other stories and we see how they come together with that, and we see that, okay, it's always the wife, even when the female is a wife and mother, you know, sometimes that don't matter. It's just, but it's definitely pointing out that she's a wife. In every instance, it's a wife. You know, so if you see something like that, could that not be Yah trying to tell you something? You know, what does the wife represent? Say la. It's in there. You know, I'm just trying to pull on your heartstrings, so, you know, to help you see. You know, I don't really want to just give it to you, because if I just give it to you, you know, and you don't have to dig for it, by the time you walk out the door and get home, you're gonna forget it. But when you start digging and put the work in, and Yah reveals it to you, then you're gonna have it forever. You know, when I give you the clues and you take those clues and you go and dig, and then Yah show you, and you got it. And it's gonna stick with you. You know, so yeah, we put these things up on YouTube, but, you know, YouTube may take them off one day. You know, so you may not always be able to go and reference it. You know, you got to get it in you. You know, and so, you know, yeah, both stories involve family enmity. There's a reason we're constantly told that the enemy is in the family. Now, and both stories contain family separation due to enmity and sin. Because at the end of the day, many of our family members are going to be separated from us due to sin. And due to sin, when we're trying to be righteous, that makes them our enemy. And many of them will resent you just simply because you're trying to be righteous. You know, you think you are that, you think you're perfect, who you supposed to be. You know, and all you're trying to do is just, you know, be right for Yah. And you making enemies. And many of them is those that are closest to you. They start hating you just because you're trying to do right. Yeah. And I didn't say hating on you, I said hating you. They really begin to hate you just because you're trying to do right. You know, so we need to, you know, learn what Scripture is trying to teach us, you know, and so that we can apply it to our lives. We can see, you know, what this thing is really about. Because outside of that, then we're just dealing with words in the book. You know, but I'm here to tell you that this is more than a book. You know, that even as the Messiah said, these words are spirit and they are life. You know, and I truly believe even in the afterlife, we're still going to be discussing Scripture. We're still going to be trying to understand Scripture. We see Scripture teaches us that we're still going to be doing the feasts that are given to Scripture. So if the feasts are still around, I can't see the Scripture not being around. And if Yahshua is truly the Word, then we know it's not going nowhere. So That's all I have for you today. Pray it was a blessing.
Hallelujah.
So next week, what we want to do is we want to do the exact same thing. We want to look for the similarities as well as the differences in the similarities with the story of Isaac and Rebekah, as well in comparison to the story of Cain and Abel. All right.
Yeah.
So everybody had a homework.
Yep.
Mrs. Goddard, you had a homework.
Miss Mac, you had a homework? Write it down.